Hello there, good morning and welcome to my little arty corner of YouTube. My name's Angela and I guess I could be described as an artist. I know I still have trouble describing myself as that and accepting it. And I said good morning, but it may be a different time of day or evening or night where you are when you're watching this. So just hello. I ought to say just hello, but it's morning here. It's about 11 o'clock in the morning here in the South Wales Valleys in Wales in the United Kingdom. And grey with a hint of sun. It's fine. You know, it's dry. What can I say? And I know there are places in the world that are desperate for rain. And I know there are places in the world that are desperate for stopping rain and all sorts. But that's my weather report for the day. And it's quite mild, actually. It's quite nice. So, no further ado. First job is to thank everybody who's subscribed. And an especial welcome to the new subscribers who've joined. Thank you so much. It's lovely to have you here. And if you're new or you're returning and you haven't subscribed and you like what you see, please consider subscribing. It's completely free. It doesn't cost you a penny. I think they ought to use a term like a like or a follow button instead of subscribe, because subscription suggests payment and it doesn't. It just means that you're going to follow my channel because you like it. And if you'd like to know when I upload videos, you just click the bell next to it and it'll notify you. You can choose how often you have notifications, what kinds, I think. But thank you. And thank you for the comments and the thumbs up, and it's fab. So with no further ado, let's get on to some arty stuff. This is a piece of watercolour card. I say watercolour card rather than watercolour paper because this is designed more for crafters than for artists. But for my purpose, it's perfect because I covered it with gesso. It was here. In fact, I did two pieces because I cut up an A4 piece because these are going to go into my little, well, one of my sketchbooks. I'm not sure whether they'll end up in my lettering sketchbook or others. And these, I started with a layer of white gesso on here, dried it, and then the colours I've added have been with Inktense pencils and water. And I've built it up in successive layers. So I've added one colour at a time, so they don't get muddy and mixed in with each other. And Inktense is wonderful because when it's dry, it's permanent. Even on gesso, it's permanent. And so you can add colours and build them up. And this one, you can see I've actually allowed the wet colour to flow and drip. Not off the page, though. It looks like it has here, but I caught it in time and tipped it back the other way. But it creates interesting patterns and textures that will go in the background. But it's this one I want to work with because it's lovely and it's warm, except for these hints of little blue or bluey greens on the corners and edges and a bit of bluey purple there in places. And I just thought, so I was looking at this, I thought, God dang it, these pink areas really look like flowers, don't they? So it's time to draw stuff. And this is one of a fun way to create art that I'd forgotten about, because usually, I mean, I do use backgrounds, but it's not very often I'll use what colour patterns appear on the background to sort of like inform me of what I'm going to do in the foreground, what I'm going to draw on it. And this just reminded me of something that I used to do a long time ago. It was probably when I was still playing with gessos and things like that. So I would have drawn on the top of, perhaps it wasn't, no, it was distress inks. But I thought this would be quite helpful when I played with watercolours, things like that. I've done this, but not for a long while. So I thought I'd share this with you and give you some ideas of things you can do and to get you, hopefully, playing around with coloured backgrounds as well. I've often seen comments, and people have made comments here, that you get scared of a blank page, a piece of white paper. You fear messing it up. Sometimes the best thing to do when you're not sure what to draw or what you want to do, or that white page or tile or piece of paper fills you with a bit of, oh, what am I going to do here? Is add colour. Just one colour or a couple of colours, or as I've done here, quite a few and built them up in layers, and then you've got something to start on. And the lovely thing is you can always add more colour on top, depending on what media you use. And with this one, when I've drawn on this, I can always seal it with gesso, so I can add colour on the top without messing the ink up or whatever if I want to. Or not, depends what I'm using. but I shall see about that. Okay, so let's get on with it. So I said these look like flowers, and I do actually feel I want to pop it. It's trying to work out which way round would this look the best. And I've got green here, but I feel that arrangement of 4 or 5 flowers there really is the best way to do it. And yes, this paper is all folded and bent because I attacked it with a heat gun to dry it, to make sure it's nice and dry. It has got a layer of clear gesso on the top, which means that it's going to have some tooth and texture, but as I found out yesterday, I can still draw on it. So let me start with, which one do I want? I think I'll start with this one on its own because that will give me a nice place to start. I've got some, I don't know if you can see the blue streaks in here. That's from the paint on the outside of the pencil, because I was using the pencils flat on the edge and realised that I was picking up. But it's not a problem because it's in the background, and it's sort of like it goes in there, it's fine. So I'm going to start with the centre of a flower, and I'm going to pop my centre here where there is a lighter area. And I think I may come back here later and add some yellow or some orange in there. So I've got yellows and oranges, and I know what colours I used for those, so I can go back and use Inktense. And I also think I'm going to put a double layer in because that's what I like to do, for no other reason. And I've got some different sized pens here. I've got an 01. I drew this with an 05, but I think in the centre here I am going to pop in some tiny little circles around the edge, and perhaps make that layer of tiny little circles a bit thicker at the bottom and keep it fairly narrow at the top, and then start filling this space in with increasingly large circles. So I've got that density of ink that suggests, let me have a look, let me zoom in for you, that suggests sort of like highlight and shadow. Of course I can enhance that by adding colour, though with these little bits I'd be tempted to add specks of gold, but that's for later. I don't need to do that now. Okay, so I want to turn this into a flower, and I can see I've roughly got a circular-ish shape here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make use of this, and I'm just going to draw little petals around this. Because I do love these tiny little petals. So that works quite nicely. But I think I've got space to add another layer. And yes, I might pick up some of the orange in these, but that's fine. I'm just using this pink area as a guide to, or an inspiration to what I want to put here. I just think this will work quite nicely. And yeah, these petals are getting bigger as I go around the flower, and I'm fine with that. So it is what it is. So I'm quite happy with that there. I have got space here for some smaller flowers, I think, or a bigger one behind this one. I think I'll put a bigger one behind, but I'm not necessarily going to make it the same kind of flower as this one, because I think that could be quite fun. And I can see here, I don't know if it shows on camera, but can you see there's almost like a rounded shape here? And there's another one here-ish. And well, I'll make one there. And then I can have that there. But I've also got a bit that sticks here, and another bit that comes there, and so on. So I've got a different kind of flower here. But I'm quite happy with that. Now I have got 3 sizes of pens because I've also got an 03 as well as the 01. So I'm going to use the 03 to draw around this, inside the petals, to give them a border as well. And I'm just going to try and think back to what I did yesterday. My last video. I say yesterday because it is yesterday to me, but it may be another time to you. And I'm just picking up my sketchbook from yesterday because I explored some arch patterns yesterday, didn't I? So let me zoom out a moment. That button. And I'm looking at this because I'm thinking, ooh, which one would be quite nice to use here? And I'm not entirely sure I want any of them. I quite like these, so if I'd done them broader, I would have liked that. So perhaps I'll just stick with good old variation on Crescent Moon, perhaps, or at least put another layer in and decide what I'm going to do inside this, because I do want something inside these loops to differentiate them from the centre. So I think that's where I'll put what is essentially stamen. In the flower, and I think I'm going to put a row of tiny little petals around the inside of my flower there, and perhaps with the O1 just add some little dots there just to add some pattern and texture and see what happens. Now the next thing I want to have a look at, and I'm going to use my O3 for this, is I do want to add some extra ink to these layers to increase that feeling of dimension, of volume, of layers. And the best way to do that is, well, for me, is using shadows and whatnot. But line thickness, because I'm not going to be using graphite on this, because I don't think that grey will look particularly nice with my background. And if I decide to add shadows, I'm going to use some other colour that will give the shadowed effect, but will also sort of like work well with these colours and not diminish them in any way. So black ink's the best way I know how to do this at the moment. And just thickening some of these little petals underneath so it looks like they have some volume. And doing this also gives me an opportunity to alter the shapes, adjust the shapes a little bit. So where perhaps I've got a wobbliness or perhaps a shape that isn't one I particularly like for my petals, I can use this just to do those little adjustments. Again here I think I need a little bit of darkness here, and I think I'm going to thicken the inside top just to help there. And I'm going to use the same kind of ideas on this one, where I've thickened the line to the bottom and left and about halfway up here to have it look like it's a ring and you can see the edge, and then the top and right down to the middle here to give that feeling of shadow and that this is raised above the insides. Oh, the other thing I can do to help with that shadow is just to put a little half dot inside those little petals. Now for these, I'm going to use that idea of to the left and bottom, because that's what I do, and that's how I make sure that I approach things in a consistent manner across the whole design. And it's less confusing then when you're looking at it, because everything sort of like kind of makes sense. It all kinds of follows the same rules, I suppose. And I'm not trying to create something that is observationally, perfect or hyper-realistic, anything like that. This is more about working with pattern. It's I'm drawing flowers, so I can't describe it as non-representational, but I can describe it as stylized or doodle art or whimsical. In fact, whimsical would be quite nice here. So I quite like these. Okay, let's move up. I think, and I do cap my pens a lot. I don't like leaving them with their caps off because I then have a tendency to forget to put the caps back on. I could pop a flower in here because that's sort of pinkyish in colour. It ties in with this here. Or I could pop something else in there. I'll come back to that. I'll decide about that in a moment. I may have to dig into my visual reference for something to go there because it's not quite as pink as this, but it's more orange than this, so we'll have a look. This one over here is going to be fun as well. There's a nice light area here I can make use of, and I am going to pop that ring inside. And while I'm at it, I may as well, while I've got my pen, I've decided I'm going to do shadows by thickening the lines to the left, the bottom, on the outside of an object, and to the top and right on the inside. Okay, so I am going to do this. I'm going to have lots of different flowers, which I find a lot of fun. So I've put little spines around this, and I will zoom in for you again so you can see. Forgot to do that. And now I'm just connecting them by, it's almost a straight line, but I'm bending the ends down so they connect with those spines but give a slight curve. I'm going to have to use a finer pen to adjust this. So that's quite nice, I like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to space the spines in the centre of these inner petals. They may or may not be the same length all the way round or thickness. Not a problem. I'm connecting them in the same way as I did previously. Like so. Part of me wanted to dip it down and create a heart shape, but I thought no, that would be getting daft. So here, on the next ring around, I'm going to pop 2 of these spines on each petal, but towards the edge, so that I create almost equal distances from here to here where they cross the spine, from here to here in the middle of the petal. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, you don't have to measure. Close enough is good enough. If we wanted it perfect, we'd use measuring instruments. And I don't particularly need this to be perfect. I just want it to be, well, I suppose, pretty. What was the quote I read this morning? Hang on, let me get my lettering. Got my lettering, one of my lettering sketchbooks here, because I was doing some hand lettering while I was waiting, after breakfast and waiting for the weekly Able and Cole delivery, my grocery delivery. And it was, art is you being free from all of the world's heaviness. And I think that's a perfect description of this. Another one you might like that I jotted down was, being an artist is the same as being a wizard. Only instead of a wand, you use a pencil for magic. Well, pencil, pen, brush, paint, whatever. And I like that. I thought I'd share that with you. Because my idea of working or art, removing the heaviness of the world, is me being able to create these pretty, fun, whimsical places that make me smile and happy and mean I don't have to focus on what's going on in the world. I can take a break from it. I'm creating my own world that I'd like the world to be. And to be able to do that is a bit of magic, isn't it? And when you draw from your imagination, from your heart, I think that is a special kind of magic. Being able to express yourself without fear of anybody criticising you. Well, there will always be critics, but it is only their opinion. And if you create art for your own personal reasons, for your own sense of aesthetics, for what you like to see or to express your inner world, then your inner world may not be the same as their inner world. And that's how it is, isn't it? Okay, I'll come back to this and add some more detail to it. Oops, I forgot those ones there. A little bit there, a little bit there. That makes a bit more sense now. Just bits there, perhaps a little bit there. Okay, and down here I'm going to, this is quite small, but the shape reminds me almost of a rose. So I've started with sort of like a semicircle, and then I've started to draw, not a perfect circle, but one that's more of a squashed from side to side in. And I'm going to repeat this process of drawing sort of semicircles, but I'm going to allow them to overlap and perhaps be a little bit imperfect in how they join together. And it's just the impression of a rose or of a different flower. And I will just add perhaps a couple more on that side and one this side. And then there. And that one will do for that. And I may just add another one here. I'm also aware I could have used deviantArt Rock and Roll to do this. It's a Zentangle pattern, and if you've watched me often enough, you know I've got a particular fondness for diva dance in most of its forms. The one I don't like is the one where it sort of like forms a cross shape. It just doesn't look right to me. But again, doesn't mean that it's not a nice pattern. It's just, it's not me. And that's fine as well. Hope I don't come across as, you know, sort of like criticising Zentangle, because I think Zentangle is a wonderful thing, especially for people who don't have any confidence in drawing or would love to be able to. And Zentangle gives you a wonderful framework to work within, to sets limits for you that helps you create. And it's fantastic, but I think there comes a time when we all have to expand beyond those limits. So that's quite nice. It looks a bit awkward though with these like this, but I think what I'll do, perhaps just pop another partial one here. Yeah, into the orange, because why not? And it's also my drawing, so I can do what I like. But I think that will create something that looks a bit more, and perhaps another one here. And I'll make this one a fair bit bigger, I think. The petals a bit bigger. Like so, and perhaps one here, just to create an interesting kind of flow of these roses. Downwards, perhaps. I'll come back to this though, because I'm not entirely sure what's going on here. But I do know that if I work at it, things do improve. There's always a point in artwork for me where I stop and think, what on earth am I doing here? This is really awful, it's not going to work out. It's not what I imagined it to be. Well, I have no imagination over this one, other than I want to work with the patterns of colour that are here. I'm going to make use of this one here, and perhaps create my rose halfway out of this. But I've learnt through experience that you just persevere, keep going, and see what happens. And rarely, very rarely have I ever ended up with art that I just think, oh, I want to throw this away. But I never throw anything away. Even if I don't like it, I'll hang on to it, I'll put it away, and I tell myself I'll come back and look at it in a while. That could be a few days, it might be a few months, so I might discover it after years. And you're able to look at it with fresh eyes, and even if you don't like it then, still, the distance in time and space and thought and so on allows you to look at it with fresher eyes and to be able to see that there's some good things in there, some good ideas perhaps, or you might be able to see how you want to finish it off better, having learnt new things. This is something that I've learnt over the years. And sometimes you can look at it and go, that really wasn't a good idea. I'm glad I've never done it again. Or, I keep repeating this. It's time for me to learn not to keep doing this thing again. Right, so this one I'm going to sort of transition from these roses over here, but I'm still going to have a rose. So I've started with a spiral in the middle, and I'm going to have these petals, these half moon petals overlapping still like this to create a little rose that goes here. Because I can. For no other reason. And I'm going to do the same here. Just going to start with a spiral and then start adding petals. It's the same kind of way of drawing, or is it a slightly different way of drawing the rose, but the centre is that little bit different, and can't quite manage to get what I've done in the middle here. I'm not entirely sure that actually works, to be honest. The spiral is a lot easier to create, I think, and work with. So there's a lot more flowers here than I wanted. Just don't get me started, isn't it? So I'll zoom out and then we can have a look at this together. Yeah, it's getting very cluttered. I wanted to leave some of the background without anything in, but I guess it is what it is now. And yeah, I get carried away. You know, I can't help it. What I think I'll do is to draw a halt on these. I think I'll just draw some leaves in, perhaps. And I'm just going to leave them quite simple at the moment, just with that central line in. And then I can decide what I do with them at a later date. I think that'll work. Now these roses haven't got any dimension to them yet, but I think I'm just going to go around the outside of them to the left and the bottom, just to thicken the lines there, just to lift them one off each other really, because it is getting a bit confusing there. And then I'll have a break from this for a while later, when I finish the video, and come back and decide how I'm going to add other elements that will help with creating that kind of dimension and overlapping there with all of these. I think that was the last one. Up here. That just adds that little bit there that just helps to separate them. Okay, how are we doing for time? Half an hour. So, let me go up to, I'm just going to go up to there. I think I will. I have tissue. Just in case the ink is a little bit damp still, that's all. And just don't want to smudge there. Up here, okie dokes, let's have a look. So I am going to do this, but I'm also going to do something a little bit different as flowers concerned on this page. And I'm going to do this where I am. I've drawn 2 circles inside as I have a bigger circle round them, and then I'm using that circle to draw my petals within. Like so. I'll thicken this line on the outside there and on the inside, and then I'm just going to add a little black sort of a upside down U or right way up U depending on where I put them, but a smaller, narrower version of the shape of the petal. I'll come back to these spaces in between in a moment, but I am going to add another line here. It's not a very good line because this pen was catching on. There's something up there from the gesso, so it was catching on that a little bit, but it's fine. And then I'm going to add petals around it. It's a W with not a very big, you know, the line in the centre of the W, just a little bit. So it's like a broad heart, if you like. I'm just going to go around this with these. Trying to keep them roughly the same size and height. But if they're not, that's okay because things aren't perfect in nature either, are they? So I will switch to a smaller pen now. Got my 03 here because I'm going to use the 03 to put an extra line around. I'm actually doing these little bits in the middle rather than the outside edge. And I am going to pop some stripes across the middle with a little bit of sparkle in the middle. That's a little gap that's left there. And as I'm likely to go back with a white gel pen when I've completed this, I could have just coloured them all in black, but it's a nice reminder, so that's quite nice. And here I think I will do these. Okay. So I'm kind of drawing the same shape within it, trying to keep my pen equidistant or the line equidistant from the outside. I missed on that one and I am not going to fret about it. I may have done a better job if I was twisting and turning my paper around, but that would make you seasick and it makes me seasick as well. So I've got these, and then I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pop a little black circle at the tip of this point here. So rather than putting something at the bottom, just thought I might like to pop it there. I said I was going to do something with these spaces in between, and I am. And I think what I'm going to do is this, where I am, it's a bit like betweed, or yeah, but in this kind of shape where I'm almost weaving the lines in. So I'm starting, have I zoomed in? I think I have. I'll zoom in again so you can see. Let's have a look. So I'm drawing the line to the left of the shape, line to the right. I'm trying to keep them equally distant but fairly close together. And in that way, I'm creating this weaving pattern like betweed, or I think this is something that's used in, I think, the tangle pattern Hurry. But it creates dimensionality as well, because that weaving back and forth takes these further down, so it pushes the petals up, as it were. So that's quite nice. I like that. Okay, this one here, I am going to go round here and I will add some lines to this layer. And I think I'll do the same in all of the petals around this layer as well. Just that little bit of ink right close to where the layers are overlapping just helps to, again, create that sense of shadow and of dimension, which is quite nice. This one, I think I'm going to do some stripes in these areas, and there'd be stripes in that area as well. Here. I could have done black and white squares, but I think I'd prefer something like this. Mine's still ticking over what to do about all of those little roses I've created. I think the best thing I can do with those most probably will be to use some colour at some point. So I must probably darken the centre of them perhaps, or I don't know. So that works quite nicely. For my leaves, I am going to add the vein lines. Put them very close together on one side of the leaf. Now, I want to do it where I think there would be shadow. So if there's light coming this way, the light would hit there. Oh, let's be consistent. Well, be consistent. So I think that one would make sense there. But I think these ones would make sense on this side. Like so. On this side as well. I'm drawing them in fairly straight here because I'm using them more for adding shadow than anything else, the lines. Okay, and I can add some little spaces between the flowers here. I am going to go back and add some black in there just to give some separation between flowers. We've got quite a bit here, and I think I will just colour this in. What is nice is the gesso I've got, which is the Art Basics, the Finnabair Art Basics, and on the top of this I've got clear gesso, actually is not catching on this fine nib at all, which is fab. Okay, where's my 05? Because I feel I need another leaf in here, so I can do that like this. And what's more, I'm going to fill this area with black and that area as well. The black is a really good way to add that shadow and also to help with dimension and so on. Okay, with the leaves, I've decided on where to add the lines. So if we have a look here, this is about the middle of this rose. So I decided that all of the leaves on this side up to the top, if I put more leaves in, will have shadows on this side. And going around the other way up to the top, they'll have shadows on this side as if it's bottom. That's all. So I decided on that central point where they would be. Okay, this flower is looking a bit bare. Bare as in not much detail, not bare as in a growly, furry thing that you find in the woods or on the ice or wherever else bears live. So here I want to add something in this centre, and I think what I'll do, I'm using the O1 again, and I'm going to pop some perks in there. I'm going to use the Tangle Pattern perk, which is overlapping circles like this, and I will just increase that where there's, I'm just going to pop some dots in where there'll be shadows on these, and then that fills the centre. And then I need to do something with these inner areas here, and that's what's been vexing me. I think I know what I can do with some of these roses as well, and I'll come back to those in a mo. No, I won't, I'll do them now. Is that for some of the roses, some of the rose petals, I am going to add some lines in like this, but I'm not going to have them touching the edge. I'm stopping a little bit short of the edge of the petal, and I'm having these lines sort of like bend towards the side like this. I'm not sure if this is going to work. And perhaps I won't do it on every rose. It looks odd if I don't do it on every petal, so it's going to be a bit of a labour of love if I decide to do this all the way round. But it may be I do this to some of the roses, but not all of them. I'll leave the central bits as they are for now. Got one more here. So I am going to leave that there as it is for a moment, and I'll think about that and come back to that later on, and decide how I do that. As I will do it with a couple of other roses and then perhaps something else elsewhere. And then I've got this particular, oops, missed that, this particular thing here. Perhaps I'll do this. Give myself an outside border on each of the petals. Just fills that space a little bit more. And what's popped into my head now is a reminder that I don't always have to use black to fill patterns or to add patterns to things, do I? I could use coloured fine liners, I could use white gel pens or gold ink, or I think I'd use acrylic ink for this. That looks better already, doesn't it? Just with those lines there. And I think what I'm also going to do is I'm going to add lines here on either side of these pillars or spikes that I said, and then I'm going to pop another one in, so it's almost like I'm weaving these as well. It's a bit like the Tangle Pattern Aura knots, and then another one set of these, and then I'm going to stop there because I won't be able to get an extra line in all of the petals, and that would make me feel it's a bit awkward. And if I decide to add colour, that difference would stand out, whereas as it is, it'll be fine. And then perhaps in the central section, rather than adding colour, perhaps I'll just fill it with some tiny circles, which is the Zentangle, or the Tangle Pattern Tipple, I think. It's one of my favourite little patterns to fill areas with where I don't want to fill spaces with black. It darkens the space but still allows the colour to show through. Could have used cross hatching, which would be quite nice actually. But this just adds that density of ink again, and it's just contributing to the layers or the layering effects of the petals, which makes me quite happy. I think that's helped quite a bit, hasn't it? I think so. Think about what I'll do with the other ones. This does happen, is that I'll go away and I'm not sure what I want to do here, but I'll have a think about it. This poor lonely one up here, I am going to pop a big circle at the centre of the petal tip and just have some dots coming down. If I can't get a dot in, I'll leave it. If I can only get one other small dot in there. But to be consistent, I think I'll do the same kind of thing here. Which would be great. So that adds that there. And with this particular section here, I think I may just add curved lines on each side, just to break this up a bit, but also to give the feeling that this might be bent. So I'm leaving a little bit of sparkle, I'm breaking the line up. So it adds texture, and then that just adds sparkle. So let me just zoom out. You can see that this is going to take a while before it's finished. And you know, I've got plenty more pink spots to do, and I've got things to do with these. I think that flower's okay as it is. I need to go and add to thicken these lines and add some ink to where the petals join together, just to help with that sense of dimension, I think. So between them and in the middle of the petals as well, perhaps a little bit there. So oops, so I've had that bulging outwards, and I don't want it bulging outwards, I want it bending inwards really. But it just makes a difference. Well, I think it does. And if it's not your kind of thing, you don't have to do it. I'm sharing with you how I create art, which isn't the only way you can do it. I'm just sharing my ideas, why I do things, how I do them. In the hope that inspire and show you how to do things step by step, to break it down for you so you can see it's not as difficult as it appears, hopefully. Hopefully. The same with these. Not so important here, I guess, because of the... But for these I'm going to have to thicken these inside the petal, because I don't want to lose any of that weaving that I've added around the petals, really. That. So that just helps that little bit. So I will get on with this. Whether I do this with you in my next video, I don't know. Let me know if you'd like to see more of this. But either way, when I finished it, I will post it on social media. Any suggestions of what I should do about colour or anything, let me know below, in the comments below. And I hope you have a go at it. A fun way to use a coloured background is using the colours, the patches of colours, to suggest where you add things. Doesn't mean you have to cover it all up or stick to the pink only for flowers thing, because I got a bit carried away with roses here, didn't I? But you can just have fun with it. So I'm going to say thank you so much for joining me. If you've enjoyed it, give a thumbs up. Hope to see you here again. And until I see you, no videos on Thursdays. Today's Wednesday, so no video tomorrow from me. If you're watching it on a Wednesday. If you're watching it on Thursday, no video on a Thursday. But I'll be back on Friday. Fingers crossed. And I shall see you then. Take care, look after yourselves, and find time to be creative. Bye. Hwyl.